As you can see, we are here to talk about the wonderful Sir Terry Pratchett, may he rest in peace, because he is awesome. We are also going to be talking about the F word. Now, I'm not talking about fuck, I'm talking about feminism.
Oh my.
So,
Which is more offensive to some.
which is absolutely more offensive to some in a very bizarre way. So in order to have this discussion, we all need to agree on a working definition of feminism. Can anybody tell me what feminism is to you? Tori, what is feminism to you?
Stop breaking the fourth wall.
That's a weird definition of feminism.
Yeah.
Well, to me, feminism is women. Excuse me.
Gary Johnson.
Women not being.
I like
Ouch.
you. You win.
I'm gonna go crawl into a hole and die now.
Wow.
To me,
Dude, she won the internet, so you lost.
feminism is the treatment of a woman no different than the treatment of a man.
Or you could look at it, and this is the definition that I'm going to be using, the social, political, and economic equality between the genders. Genders including everybody, non-binary, transgender, whole shebang. And I could make an argument that Terry Pratchett wrote a transgender character into one of his books, and we will get to that later. As you can see, the Tiffany Aching series is sitting on the table. Somebody is going to take them home. That's not me, even though I could use new copies because mine are kind of damaged. But if anybody does not have the Tiffany Aching series, it also includes first edition of his final book, The Shepherd's Crown, which still makes me cry. So, Terry Pratchett and feminism. You're either here because you like Terry Pratchett, you're interested in feminism, or you're going, how the hell did that get put back together? Well, I've been thinking about this for actually a couple of years now, and to me, it is very rare that a male author not only can write feminist characters that are well-rounded and have flaws, but it's very rare that a man can create a world that this exists in. Is everybody here somewhat familiar with the Discworld? Is anybody here not familiar with the Discworld? Tori, that's divorce worthy. That's it. I'm kidding. The Discworld takes from different mythologies. It's very satirical, kind of along the lines of Douglas Adams' work. And he has created this world where you have dwarves, you have golems, you have vampires, you have people, you have goblins. Just a crazy, crazy mix. And I kind of think of it as Victorian England with magic thrown in. So kind of along the lines of Dr. Whatever and Mr. Norrell, which I haven't. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. To me, it's a utopia. It's what we would have if we had a benevolent dictator. Focusing on Ankh-Morpork, which for a long time I still pronounced Ankh, so I have to double check that. Wow, I didn't realize I was gonna have to give a little bit of a history, but that's okay, I can do that. In Ankh-Morpork, there exist guilds. There's the Guild of Assassins, the Thieves Guild, Magicians Guild, the Fools Guild, and you have the Guild of Seamstresses, which, contrary to some opinion, is not for seamstresses. So he created a world where not only was it legal to be a prostitute, you had to be unionized. You can't get really any more socialist than that. I'm sorry,
Ladies
I'm a
of
little bit nervous.
negotiable virtue.
I'm sorry. There you go, ladies of negotiable virtue. So,
No, affection. Negotiable affection, isn't it?
I'm not gonna wade into this
Okay.
one.
it depends on what book it is.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And
That
there's
was translated from the English.
there's characters that embody the different types of feminism. There were 3 waves of feminism: first wave, second wave, and third wave, and they, to me, can be completely represented by the 3 witches of Lancre. You have Granny, who I love, worship, and adore. You have Esme, who is the grandmother that we all want. And then you have McGrath Garlick, who is the newer generation coming up and inheriting this maternal world that's still very, very paternal in a lot of really interesting, weird ways that kind of mimic society today. For example, Esk wants to go to university and be a wizard because she was given a wizard staff when she was a baby due to the arrogance of a man. And she was told, no, you're a witch. Wizard is man's magic. Witchery is women's magic. You can't confuse the two. You can't have both. But she defied that system and did end up having both. So it's a really interesting duality that exists for those that have read the Discbook series, or Discworld series, not Discbook. Does anybody want to chime in?
Equal Rights, that was the name of the book, right?
I'm sorry?
Equal Rights?
Yes.
Yes.
Which is funny because rights was not spelled R-I-G-H-T-S, it was R-I-T-E-S. So the duality doesn't exist in just the books, it also exists in how he presents them. And I think there's, 42 Discworld books? Something
Sounds
ridiculous like that. And you have to ask yourself how he could write. And anybody that knows anything about Sir Terry Pratchett knows that he didn't put anything into his books that weren't supposed to be there. He wasn't the kind of person just to insert a Shakespearean novel because he liked it. He did it for a purpose. So within this series, there's the Witch's Groove, there's the Rincewind series, which is awesome, and I would argue that he's a feminist as well.
If you can catch him.
I'm sorry?
If you can catch him.
If you can catch him. This morning I told my husband, he reminded me of Moist von Lipwig, and he looked at me and went, "What did you just say?" I'm like, I'm just saying. So there's all different kinds of parallels, and when you think about feminist books, or feminist series, or feminist authors, Terry Pratchett is not the first person that comes to mind. But he unarguably is. I mean, let's take Granny Weatherwax, for example. She is the head of the coven when covens aren't supposed to have a head of state, and is in control of all of the witches and demands respect. Yet she locks herself into this role where she has to be good. She can't give into the darkness, so to speak. She tells McGrath very, very plainly, no, you can't be a witch and you can't be a queen at the same time. You just can't do it. So while she is breaking the glass ceiling for herself, it's very interesting that she tries to seal that off for other characters within the Discworld. But she uses headology a lot, so you could also take that to mean that she is going to have you do what she wants you to do by telling you not to do what she wants you to do, which can be very paternalistic in nature as well, because that's what, no offense, men have been doing to women and other genders for centuries, that kind of manipulation tactic. So it's very interesting, and I feel like I've been talking for a very long time. Does anybody have any questions at all? Who's your favorite character? Come on.
So you are concentrating on the Discworld series?
Yes.
Okay, so do you think that his feminism expands out to his other works?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You can see it in Nation. I'm sorry, Riley Quinlan. I didn't bring it up. The main character, the girl whose name is escaping me right now, gets lost on this world where the social conventions that she grew up with, that she knows, are no longer valid. But she is very concerned with presentation and doing things just right and being able to write down invitations so the crazy ghost boy knows what she means. And in working through the book, and I don't want to give anything away, she learns how to adapt throughout that entire book and has a very, very interesting ending. I also think the Long Earth series that he did with Stephen Baxter has amazing, amazing strong female role models and is very feminist in nature, even though it takes place from the viewpoint of the male character.
Joshua.
Yeah. I haven't read all of the last book yet. I'm kind of savoring it because it's one of the last things that he wrote, and it took me about a month to read The Shepherd's Crown after it came out. And I think that it's what everybody needs. I find it fascinating that this came from a British author, but the satire and the political correctness, so to speak, in it is fantabulous. You have female heads of state, like Lady Margalotta, who is also a vampire, and a very interesting relationship with Vetinari that doesn't necessarily get explained. You have one of the first transgender characters to come out in Monstrous Regiment, in Sergeant Jackram, which is a great book. If you guys have not read Monstrous Regiment, pick it up. One could argue that that book, that center of the book, or that book as the center of the Discworld series, to me is one of the things that defines it as a feminist series.
And you know where the title comes from?
Monstrous Regiment? Anything not normal was considered monstrous, and since the girls
No, there
changed.
was a quote from the late 19th century that talked about a monstrous regiment of women. And it was one of the late 19th century suffragettes. I can't recall the name.
Oh, that's right, it was, her face is in my head and I can't think of it. She was one of the British ones, so she wasn't an American suffragette.
But that's where it comes from.
Interesting to know. See, even I learn things at panels. Good to know. Hey, thank you, ma'am. Anybody?
Well, even on his characters with Rincewind, a lot of the female characters are very strong. You know, like the sorcerer,
Well, I mean, anyone standing next to Rincewind does appear stronger.
He's my favorite character.
He's got a point though.
That's pretty funny. I like that. I'll have to you put that on Facebook with your permission, of course. And unlike
Well,
he
that's
writes,
implying that he would be staying still. Generally, if someone's next to him, he's running away.
and the thing is, he writes well-rounded female characters. He writes female characters that are inherently flawed, and it's the flaws that he brings out in them that I think makes them most feminist in nature, unlike Stephen Moffat, who can only write strong females one way. All of his female characters are strong in some way or another. They embody the different traits that we have. And I know for me as a reader and as a feminist and a political whatever the hell I am, I find myself going back to these books and rereading them and finding something new and comparing something that he wrote 20 years ago with what is going on now. And as I've gotten older, certain aspects of the characters, like Esme and Nanny, just make much more sense to me. And I really do like the idea of the three women not only embodying the three different stages of feminism, first wave, second wave, and third wave, but in some ways they could also be seen as the Holy Trinity as well. which I find very, very fascinating. I read a couple of articles about that, and it just blew my mind. The Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. You have McGrath, you have Nanny, and then for anybody that's read The Shepherd's Crown, you have Granny, not to give anything away. So you would have the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost in that capacity as well. So it's really interesting, this take that he has. Go back to Monstrous Regiment for a little bit. All of the girls were there to find something that they were told that they couldn't have. And they found it as men. But in finding it as men, did they necessarily find themselves as women? Or were they, to quote Tropic Thunder, a woman playing a man, playing a woman, playing a man, and then hi! Sorry. Hi, Ann! Not necessarily knowing who they were. And you also see that with McGrath Garlic when she comes up with what Granny calls McGraths, which are pants to wear under her skirt as she's flying her broomstick. So there's all of these really interesting, very intricate relationships that go back to what we as women are told we are supposed to be. Can we be the queen and still be the witch? Can we have a family and still be a witch? Can we have a career and be a mom, and what does that mean, and how do we create our own histories? With McGrath, it was done by the creation of Queen, I always in my head say Yinsi. I don't know how you say it in your head. But there was some armor that was found that matched a portrait. So she essentially created this entire history for this one person because she didn't have one. There were no huge feminist role models. But the minute she put on what she felt was Queen Yinsi's armor, she was able to do things that she couldn't do as McGrath, that she couldn't do as the woman that she became, or that she was, because she wasn't allowed to be the mom who had the child on her hip and the broadsword in the other hand, saving her people from the elves. And I don't want to spoil anything, which is why I'm kind of being vague, but it's really interesting, the history that a man wrote for these female characters. It's not like in Star Trek, which I love, worship, and adore, but it's still not very feminist in nature. You can take things and you can argue that they're feminist. But his books, to me, are, to go back to science fiction and social commentary, feminist without having to say it. Does that make
That's
sense?
not really, yeah. Well, there was one panel that he was on years and years ago about how to write your own series, and someone asked him how did you make Ankh-Morpork seem so real and alive? It's not just that you describe it well, it's I feel like I lived there at one point. And he said, well, so many people forget that writing science fiction is really about just writing about everyday life. You have to be practical. How did they get water in? How did they get, not water out? And I think I never put it in terms of feminism, but I think that's why he writes so well in terms of making a strong female characters. He's just looking at it practically. He's just saying, what would a strong woman do in this role? How would she have had to have grown up to become a strong woman? And I mean, he naturally builds his history for himself because he's building his characters the same way he builds his cities and his countries and his races. What's the practical line of evolution to make what I want to have happen?
To quote Cherry Littlebottom, she can do anything a man does, provided she only does what a man does. Which, going back to the heart of the panel, is inherently feminist, just in that one statement. Because we can do whatever we want to do as women, provided we only do what women do. And I don't know how many of you know the history of the dwarves in Ankh-Morpork or on the Discworld, their history is, until you get into a serious relationship with one, they are all men. They are all treated as men. And don't confuse the search for equality with everything being equal. I was reading an article this morning in Philosophy and Terry Pratchett, and it said that you have to be able to address the needs of everybody. If Sam Vimes gave out 7.5 size shoes to everybody, it wouldn't fit the needs of everybody that were part of the Night's Watch. It would still be oppressive to some because not everybody has a 1.5 foot. So you have to be able to meet the needs and understand that the needs, depending on who you're talking to, are different. Cheery had a real need to express and explore her femininity, which I can attest to. Grew up in a very, went beyond non-gender household, but it was very, very male in the fact that I was not allowed to explore anything that was feminine, anything that a traditional woman would do, like wear makeup or be a cheerleader or do this or do that. I wasn't allowed to do. Mainly because my mom is insane, but that's neither here nor there. Hi Mom, I love you. But it was just how I grew up, so I was not allowed to explore my femininity. Being able to explore who you are is a huge part of feminism. And he got some blowback when he wrote Cherry Little Bottom, and she started wearing makeup and wearing dresses and wearing chainmail that was more fitted to a female body than a male body. But for him, the exploration was part of the equality. For him, the exploration of who you are, regardless of who you are, is part of the journey. And that one scene where she was talking to, and in my head I pronounce it Angua, and I know that's not right, so forgive me. When she was, can you show me how to put on makeup? Can you show me how to do this? It struck a chord with me, not only because I'm female, but I'm a mom, and I'm the mom of this great individual who is on their own journey and doing their own exploration with gender. And it just really, really hit home for me. And I just thought that it was amazing. You guys are here either because you like Terry Pratchett or because you like feminism, so I want to hear from you guys. What is your take on everything that I'm saying? And you don't have to agree with me. We can agree to disagree. It's all good.
Well, I think that not only feminism, but just rights in general. I mean, he talks about stories where the undead were protesting for more equal rights and stuff like that. He was not just feminism, but he covered a whole range of topics in his society that he built.
Do you think in doing that it fits with the working definition of feminism that we had at the beginning?
Yeah.
With the social, political, and
Yeah.
Economic equality? Good, I like that.
Just an observation about the book. The feminism theme and strong female characters run throughout a number of books, but talking about other things, they're more like standalones. The clacks come in, the golems turn into the postal carriers. But the feminism is a constant throughout a lot of this, and I think that you need to see the themes, not just. He was big on bringing in disparate groups and amalgamating them into a more or less equal society. But the feminism is very strong through all of his books.
Do you guys think that his identity as a feminist evolved throughout his work? You can take a look at the very beginning and then take a look at Snuff, for example, with the goblins. What do you guys think of that?
I think he evolved a lot over time, because the first books were really just a parody. He, even from his own words, he really wasn't thinking that deep until Equal Rights. And that's when they really started to be more than just a parody. I think that's where it started to shift into satire and pointing out the ridiculousness of our society and these rules that we put on things that just don't, when you look from outside, they just don't make sense. And I think that was when he really started, but I think that probably was about the time that his daughter was born. So, or really, not when she was born, but more like when she started asking questions about stuff about, Daddy, can I do that too?
So why do you think Granny still puts all of these rules on the witches?
Because she puts them on herself. Because she has seen the dark side with her sister. And she refuses to ever step over that line. So because she knows she could do it, she wants no one else to do it. And she's human and a little bit short-sighted, and she doesn't see that necessarily. Not everyone needs those rules. But I think eventually she learns that.
Well, she holds women and witches especially to a higher standard.
Yes.
Than I think she realizes. I mean, she's like, well, we're witches, we're the top of society, so we have to have the highest standards.
Do you think that's why she won in the battle with Arch-Chancellor Redcully?
Yes.
Well, that's like the unstoppable force meets immovable object of stubbornness. I don't know.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think Granny's real flaw is? I have something in mind, but I want to see what you guys think. What was her fatal flaw? I swear I wasn't going to talk about Granny this much, but she just keeps popping up. So
I would say she's too hard on herself.
okay.
That she's always testing herself. Like everything she does is about crossing that line. Like she always expects that one day she's gonna start cackling. And
That is true.
And
Black Alice, here we come.
yes, like she's always thinking that she's one step from being Black Alice, and so everything is a test of, did I do it right, did I do it right, so she does that to other people, which is part of the reason why everyone kinda, everyone respects her, but nobody really likes her except Nanny, who can put up with all of her shit.
Well, yeah, but that's because Nanny loves everybody.
I would not say that, she doesn't, I don't know that Nanny loves everybody, but.
Well, not
She's
her
more-
daughter-in-laws, but.
Well, yeah, I would say that Nanny is the other side of the same coin as Granny. They both do the headology, but they do it in different ways. And I definitely wanna be Nanny on. She has way more fun than Granny ever did.
She does.
I think Granny gets a little bit lost trying to play the fine line of moderation and being in the middle, because she's seen what happens if you have too much hate, and she's seen what happens if you have too much love, which is Nanny on. She has these two witches which are out of control in a nasty way and in a fantastic way, and she's obsessed with control, with moderation, with being the sterling example of how, these are all the things you shouldn't be doing, but she's not doing them to the point where it's no longer moderation, she's obsessively moderate, which is its own excess.
I think if you had to sum up her flaw very succinctly, is rigidity. She's far too rigid.
Which is a much more succinct way of saying it.
It's way briefer than I did.
Anybody else? I think it's because she never allowed herself to love or fall in love. There was that one book where we got a glimpse into what would have happened if she would have stayed with the dude. That was Lords and Ladies, which I found really, really interesting.
So you're saying her biggest character or thing has to do with a man?
No, I'm
So
saying that her
that-
biggest character flaw is that she wasn't able to love anybody else. She could care about somebody. But she
it's
never
another-
said, I love you to anybody.
But you're saying that this one particular is a man.
No, I'm saying that the one time we caught a glimpse of what she could have been, had she fallen in love, it was due to what was going on in Lords and Ladies.
So she would have been a better person if she had the love of a man.
She would have been a better person if she had the love of anybody.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
just, I mean, now there's a little in.
The reason that I'm saying that is because that's what he wrote about. We got glimpses into the different lives that she could have led. And there were lives where she didn't have the girls. But never once throughout the entire story did she ever say, I love you. Nanny Ogg was very, very vehement with how she felt about people. Didn't matter. But Granny kept that part of herself locked off, which I find really, really
Well,
interesting.
I think she felt that passion leads to stepping over the line. Whether it's good or bad, it makes you cross that line. Because her sister was always saying how she was doing it because she loves you. And so if love is dangerous, she just cut that off. I mean, 'cause she always was, like, until you, the cat, did she even really have a companion until, Tiffany gave her one?
Oh.
And I
And
think.
she just couldn't give it back to Tiffany, which is why she kept him.
I think
or her.
Tiffany was, more so even than Esk, I think Tiffany was Granny's breakthrough of it's okay to love.
We've been focusing a lot on the witches, so I'm gonna switch gears just a little bit and talk about Susan Stowe-Hylett, who I love, who is absolutely great. Granddaughter of Death, not Daughter of Death, Granddaughter of Death. And in some of the books, she had to assume this role. Because of her parents, she was seen as a duchess, and I believe that the quote was, the only acceptable profession for a duchess was, not a nanny, but like,
Governess.
which she did in Hogfather. She got pulled into Death's realm, and we all, well, not we all, I don't wanna speak for everybody, Death throughout the years, Big Death, with the exception of Neil Gaiman, generally has been portrayed as male. So you have this female coming into this very, very male world and being expected to fulfill a role that she doesn't know how to do. To me, when I read that, when I first read Hogfather, it reminded me very much of being thrust into the role of woman or motherhood and not knowing anything about it. Like, holy crap, what do I do now? I'm responsible for A, B, C, and D, and nobody's told me how to do this. What the heck am I gonna do? Which I find very, very interesting. Does anybody have anything they wanna talk about? Cause I feel like I know it's a panel and I'm talking a lot, but I feel like I'm monopolizing it, so. Cause I know there's a lot of stuff I haven't talked about or touched on, so what would you guys like to address? Yes, she can.
You have a monopoly of the panel to begin with.
Well, I know, which is why I'm asking for help from all y'all.
If you don't wanna feel bad, you just like move over to a different chair and change your voice pitch a little bit.
Tori, you weren't supposed to talk about what we do at home.
Just don't Smeagol it and you're all right.
You've had to live with Terry Pratchett for the last oh, do you have a question?
Well, it's more of a comment, because I've
Okay.
not read it, I've really not read this series, but you mentioned earlier that you felt those three female characters were the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. I find that interesting because I've studied Celtic mythology, and there's a symbol that's used in both Celtic mythology and Christian mythology. And in Christianity, it's the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. In Celtic mythology, it's the maiden, the mother, and the crone.
I'm so glad somebody brought that up.
The maiden, the mother, and the other.
Yeah, maiden, mother, and the other. We don't use the C word. Much like we don't use the F word, we don't use the C word. Absolutely, they embody that. And to go back to Granny for a moment, I found her existential crisis incredibly interesting because she couldn't be the crone anymore. She was never a mother. It had been years since she had been a maiden. Where did she fall?
Well, I think she was technically still a maiden, but she was way too old to wear the flowy white dress anymore.
So what happens when the next generation comes to power? We're seeing that right now politically in a very, very interesting way. We have two forces. We have Granny Weatherwax and Arch-Chancellor Ridcully fighting it out.
I was asking more like Tia.
Oh, who, to make an interesting tangent, was not only in a Doctor Who episode, he was also in Band of Brothers, the actor that played him in Hogfather.
Hopefully not as creepy.
No, you felt sorry for him in Band of Brothers. But look at the way Hillary is being treated. You know, she's being slammed for having the audacity to do something that only males have done. But she's doing it in a very feminine way. Reminds me a lot of Nanny Ogg in that respect. Doing what she wants, how she wants it done, and trying to do it non-apologetically, where you have this patriarchy that's been telling her for years, you can only go so far in this role before you have to stop. We could go so far as to look at her clothing and go, why the crap is she wearing pantsuits that don't have pockets? McGrath loves pockets, thinks they're the greatest invention ever, which is very, very interesting in its own way. But what is she saying to the McGraths and the Esks and the Tiffanys that are coming up now? How are they going to be breaking through the political glass ceiling when she is arguably one of the most powerful women in politics, much like Granny is the most powerful witch since Black Alice in the series? Are they both doing the same thing? It's an interesting dialogue. It's an interesting dichotomy. I like that.
She was my favorite relative.
Dichotomy?
Yes.
Yeah.
I say it so much, people are like, and that is, explain this again?
It's called a dictionary.
Dictionary starts with dick, jeez.
We're so anti-feminist.
Exactly. I found my way to Terry Pratchett through Neil Gaiman.
Good one.
Me too.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I read Good Omens and, the girl's name that was in the gang. Her name is escaping me right now.
Are you talking about the kids?
Yeah. I cannot remember her name. She was one of Pratchett's creations as far as that book went. And I think reading it, spawned my love for everything that is Terry Pratchett. I'm sorry I did not get to meet him in real life, but I'm glad to because I have this idea of who he is that I can keep. But yeah, being able, I guess one of the things that I'm trying to say is being able to see myself reflected in his characters makes me, as a woman, as a feminist, as a female, and as American, very proud that somebody can do that somebody can write so well that you see aspects of yourself within all of these characters. I mean, we love the series because we can identify with Rincewind, we can identify with Susan Stowe-Hylett, we can have empathy for Death, who we're not supposed to have empathy for. but you also get to see his humanity as well. I think if more people read his work, it would absolutely change how we view the world, to put it tritely and corny. He wrote his own world and he changed ours, so, which is awesome. 10 minutes left. Comments, concerns, questions?
How do you see Moffat's characters as flawed compared to Terry Pratchett's?
I don't see them as flawed, I see them as
Or
flat.
One-dimensional.
I see them as very one-dimensional.
I'm here as a writer wanting to improve my writing skills with females, so.
Okay. Strong doesn't just mean standing up to the doctor, which you see in Alex Kingston's character, who I love. Didn't see that as much in Rose. I think that his best female that he wrote for was Donna, because she was sassy. She wasn't afraid to be, but she wasn't afraid to be vulnerable. And Moffat, to me, wasn't good at, he was very, very good at this, but he couldn't add things very, very well.
The female characters are too malleable.
That is a very good way of saying what, I like that, malleable. Anybody else? Yes. Hi, I love you.
So I haven't had a chance to read a lot of Pratchett. I've read like 2.5 books, I think. I have other ones on my shelf, I just haven't gotten around to them. So I know that especially with Discworld, you can pretty much jump in wherever you'd like, but what kind of recommendations, like?
Equal rights.
Got that one on my shelf.
That's where I would start.
Some would suggest avoiding Eric entirely.
Alright.
No, read Eric when you want to laugh, or when you want to spoof a Faust, because it is. That's why it's marked out. But yeah, I would start with equal rights. I would start with the witches and work your way out.
Yeah. Do you want to expand on why you think Rincewind is feminist?
Why I think Rincewind is feminist?
He doesn't
Because
look
he
on
didn't
women.
sexualize, what's her name?
Cohen's daughter?
Yeah,
Crud.
something the henna-haired Harridan.
But he dreams of mashed potatoes.
What? He did dream of mashed potatoes. Because he viewed women in the same vein as he viewed men. He didn't have
He was scared of all of them.
an ist bone in his body. He wasn't racist, he wasn't sexist, he wasn't genderist. He just was Rincewind, ran away from everything, fell into these grand adventures, absolutely hated it. Never wanted to get married, understood that he couldn't get married because then he would lose his magic, but he didn't really believe that.
He hated everyone equal.
There you go. Tori, who's your favorite character from the Discworld?
Susan.
Mort.
Why? Because that's the only movie you've seen?
Don't tell these people I haven't read the
the
books.
book.
You know I can't
Referring
read.
to the movie.
You know I can't read.
Are there movies?
Yes, there
Yeah.
are. There's a Hawkfather movie, Going Postal. There is,
Color
The
Magic.
color magic.
yep,
I've seen
which
that
was
one.
bad, even though Sean Astin was in it. It was
He was
awful.
Oh, sorry,
There
say
was
it
an animated version of.
Witches Abroad
Yes.
and one other. I have not seen that one. Two others?
The We Free Men is in the
Soul
making.
Music.
Soul
Soul
Music. Soul Music.
And
I don't know.
What are they on?
Do we have it?
What are they on?
Do we?
You can get them on DVD. or the animated ones are on YouTube.
They're on YouTube.
There was also a point and click adventure video game.
Yep, which was re-released after he died.
Wow. That's gotta be super fun.
Anybody else? Who's your favorite character, if I may ask, ma'am?
I think I like, I like naming
And you, ma'am? Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, it has been so long since I've read them. I read them in high school.
Oh.
But I would not remember.
Okay.
My favorite? There's too many.
Give us your top 5.
Well, I would say, Tiffany, Vimes, probably, Perdita.
Ooh, oh, I didn't even talk about her, damn it.
Still got 4 minutes.
Personality.
4 minutes.
And, I just like them all.
Oh, Agnes. I love Agnes. I forgot about her. That's what you get when you have a series that's 42 books long. You're like, oh man, I could talk about this person, and this person, and this person.
And Sybil.
Sybil, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Sybil's awesome.
Is that the 42 books now? Does that mean it's the meaning of life, the discourse?
Oh.
You got the life, universe, everything.
See, maybe that's why I was wondering about a Douglas Adams Terry Pratchett crossover. They could do that, and Bowie and Prince could write the soundtrack, and it would be epic. That would be phenomenal. I would love that. Does anybody want the Tiffany Aching series? I have it up here to give away. She raised her hand first, and she actually was one of the first people in the panel. So I'm going to give them to you. You get all of them. Yay! So, does anybody have any questions before we conclude? We're getting close.
Does anyone want any ribbons? They're just
for-
related.
Oh, the turtle moves.
You only know that because you saw it.
No, I read that book. That's
That
the
was
only
the
book
one
I've
book
read.
he read.
That's the book that you read?
I thought he'd like it.
Small Gods was the book that you made him read?
Only one.
Small Gods. You started him out with Small Gods.
Are you hating on turtles?
No, I'm not hating on turtles.
I thought you could start wherever you wanted in it.
Not with Small Gods. Yeah, wow. That's like starting out
Oh
with
my
Thief
gosh,
of
these-
Time.
Oh wait, no, veterinary president, I have to have that one too.
Oh, I didn't talk about her either.
There's
Damn it.
always next
Oh,
year.
The auditor that became female?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not gonna put this on this, I'm gonna put this on my work bench. Sorry for president.
It was just there.
Oh, that's all
I
right.
had to do it, you know.